Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon at our first virtual Tableau user group meeting. I really appreciate you guys taking the time today to join us. I'm pretty excited about our lineup this afternoon. My name is Tink Perozak. Some of you may have attended some of our physical meetings in the past. And I'm one of your Calgary Tableau user group leaders. The other being Fuyo Watanabe, who we also have the pleasure of hearing from later this afternoon in one of our presentations. I wanted to give you guys a quick overview of our meeting this afternoon. First of all, we want to ask questions in the Q&A button that's available in the bottom of your screen. So if you could use that instead of your chat button to ask your questions, we'll be monitoring that. With each presenter, you're welcome to ask your questions throughout the presentation. They will either have a section where they're pausing for questions, or if you ask the question, we'll take note of that and ask the presenter the question at that time. So feel free to do that. Also, I want to let you know that the event is being recorded and will be posted in our online community afterwards. So look for that along with any shared presentations. So our overview for the agenda is we'll first be talking about Tableau software and what's new with the new versions. So we're kind of excited to hear about what's happening with Tableau and what might be available to us now or in the near future. After that, we have Chad Walter and Donald O'Byrne, and they're from ATB Financial, and they're going to be talking about their Tableau journey, 0 to 3,000 in 18 months. I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of excited to hear about that. That's quite the lead. So after that, we're going to have Fuyo Watanabe from AE Data Group, and she's also the co-leader for the Calgary Tableau user group. And she's going to be talking about some work that she's been doing with Mask Makers YYC. And I think you're going to find that very interesting as well. Some really great work going on there. After that, we're going to hear from Jason Scarlett at Alberta Health Services, and he's going to give us the COVID-19 from the perspective of an AHS analyst. So a look at how AHS has used data and analytics to help the decision-making during this pandemic. So I'm super excited to have these folks share with us this afternoon. I hope you're looking forward to the presentations. And again, I want to welcome you for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it off to Shane and Brandy, or Donnell, who's going to be looking after that. Is that correct? So we'll hand that off to...
No.
Is Shane and Brandy on the line?
I think they may still be caught up in that meeting if you want to move on to...
Okay, we'll go straight to Chad and Donnell from ATB Financial. Thanks very much for sharing with us this afternoon.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having us. All right, so I am Donald O'Byrne with ATB Financial. I'm a Senior Insights Advisor. So I get to tell people at ATB how best to use Tableau every day in their life. It's as simple as that. I basically get to be a paid Tableau consultant without having to find contracts. We're supposed to say a fun fact about ourselves. So as it turns out, my family were the last commercial water-powered grain millers in all of Ireland. And we did it in this mill. So if you can see that, I don't know if you can see that or not, but yes, I grew up spent many summers at this very mill. So that's my only fun fact. I'm incredibly boring otherwise. Chad?
So my fun fact is that I'm nowhere near as fun as Don. I couldn't. So the only thing actually I came up with that was nearly interesting as Don is the fact that when I was in Beijing traveling on business, I went to the Forbidden City, and lo and behold, there's Starbucks. Who knew Starbucks would be in this ancient building as I was doing a bit of a tour. And well, I couldn't resist but buy a cup of coffee from the Starbucks there. It's nowhere as good as what we have in our neighborhood one, but you know, had to do it anyways. And that's it about me. So going on, if we want to have a look at what's happening or what ATB, who ATB is. So I'm sure most of you are familiar. It's a government-owned bank here in Alberta. And I say here in Alberta, it's actually there in Alberta for me. I'm a BC-based employee. So that's something else about me that I didn't reveal a moment ago. But one of the things that we want to highlight is for 2020, Great Place to Work nominated or presented Tableau as the #1 best place to work. And also Forbes rated ATB Financial as the #21 world top bank. So pretty impressive stats for an Alberta-based bank and financial institution. And I think I wanted to present that just to say, you know, proud to work where I do and things like that. A little more about ATB. We look at those big numbers, 775,000 plus customers. We have over 5,500 team members, 143 agencies, 247 communities that we service with 174 branches, and then 82 years in existence. So pretty cool to have a history like that as well in such a good province as Alberta. So as we look at what some of the things we're going to touch on today, what our journey is and where we are and some of the key platforms. So we're looking at Google Cloud Platform. We've been dealing with Google Studio, and of course, what else could we do but be using Tableau as our primary BI tool today. And then we have two areas of focus that we've really been honed in on over the last few years, and that's customer obsession and transforming our business and how we do business.
Oh, so, all right. As part of our BI strategy, we started rolling out Tableau a few years ago as a platform. But really where we started to succeed with Tableau was that when we adopted our self-service insights strategy. So we wrapped it up in a value proposition, which really says that, at its core, we're not going to read the whole thing, but at its core, that decision-making cannot be relegated to a select few who rely on limited information. We have to enable it to all frontline staff. So what we don't want is you don't want a business intelligence center of excellence designing all the reports. We want everyone to have the ability to analyze, to reach, analyze, and create visualizations on their own data. So it's all wrapped into a number of key objectives, really outlined here. The most important one that we have for us is the hyper-personalized customer experiences. Now, this might sound a little bit like we're enabling banking to retail customers or Tableau to retail customers. We consider every single ATB team member a customer. So we treat them all as someone who has to consume data, and we want them to have the ability, and the great features the platform has, and really it's about getting those features rolled out to all those team members. So, I mean, at this point, Chad's going to give you a very, very quick walkthrough on the history of ATB, the history of Tableau at ATB.
Yeah. So as Tink mentioned, how did we get to 3,000 consumers of data within our platform as quick as we did? And here's a little timeline journey that I'm going to walk you through, fairly high level, obviously, because that's a lot of time and a lot of people that we dealt with in building up this environment in this community. It was a beautiful sunny day in September when I decided to take a vacation. And when I came back, many of my team members were evaluating Tableau Desktop, lo and behold.
Sorry.
Nope. And as that time went on, an official POC was kicked off. At that time, we were also looking to establish going into cloud. And so one of the things that they decided to do was an official POC with Tableau in the Google Cloud Platform. So we went to GCP and started working through that process. It moved pretty quickly. By February, we had finally landed our architecture. We had sort of finalized how we were going to tackle things in there, and then we started building out our servers. And Tableau was actually one of our first tools that we started building out in that architecture in the GCP. And so by April, we were already set with our servers. Our desktop clients were ready to roll out, and we had a few that were continued during this process to learn the tool. And we introduced a team called Spark at ATB, and they really they were about driving community, or are about driving community and communications within our user base. And so they really helped us solidify that and work through that. So one of the things you'll see on the timeline, April 2018, we had our first wave 1 onboarding with a small user base, in-person classroom training on desktop tools, and we were continuing to build out our community at that time. And when I talk about build out the community, Don's going to talk further to this in regards to some of those components that we used, and things like different communication ways of communicating and sharing and ensuring users are being taught. If we fast forward to October later in the year 2018, we had already been through several versions of the software, something that if you're an administrator or a systems analyst, you may know that obviously in a cloud-based environment, you can stand up and change your servers fairly quickly at a pretty good clip. And so we did this as well. So we jumped around. I think our very first version was maybe early version of 10. As you can see, by October, we were already moving into 2018.2. It's hard to keep up with the pace of Tableau's releases, I find. And so looking back at some of the history, I was impressed that we did move as quickly as we did. So October 2018 came, and TC18 was coming up. Tableau did an incredible, or ATB I should say, did an incredible investment in those who are passionate user base in regards to the BI side of things. And so we had a high number of people go into TC18 from our Tableau community. We jump again a little bit further into mid-2019. We're upgraded now to 2019. Our user base had grown quickly at that point at 1,600 plus users. And if we jump forward to a year later, we almost double again in size to our 3,000. So that's where we're at. And then if I'm looking at my crystal ball, something I'm actually working on as the systems administrator right now is I'm just waiting actually for end of the week, the release for 2020.2.2. And I've got 3 shiny new Windows 2016 servers waiting for me to start building on. So that's where we're headed. And that was sort of the history of how we came to be from 0 to 3,000. So of the 3,000, if we look at a few key stats and milestones on this, one of the things that we see is, and Dawn again is going to be, I think, talking to this later, is we never turn down anyone from having a user license. So we have got, we're continuing to grow, and we always have licenses and bring people in. If you're familiar with Gartner's information or studies on business intelligence, you probably know that BI adoption often fails. Very low adoption. Everyone gets hyped up about the shiny new tools and wants to jump in. I'm really proud to say that the efforts and work that have gone on over the last couple of years with in coordination with Tableau and their support, again with ATB, our adoption rate's at 66%, well above what Gartner actually states in regards to the 30% mark. And I was talking with my manager earlier today, and that very statistic was still in that 30% range 10 years ago, at least, when I was doing some of these other presentations for other tools and studies. And then right now, throughout our business, we have 216 creators, and that is continuing to grow. I know that's music to Shane's ears, and he's probably got a big grin on his face right now. So we're looking at continuing to grow that. We are pretty stiff on how our creators have their licenses, how long they have them for, and if you're using them or not. So. And then I'm just going to let Don talk to the other half of the slide there.
All right. So Shane gave us a bunch of ideas on how to talk about this presentation. So he's awesome at taking care of us. What we wanted to focus on today was our 3 key successful areas when it comes to our overall strategy of Tableau: robust license management, comprehensive training, and strong community support. So I'm just going to jump onto the next slide. When it comes to robust license management, we aren't kidding when we say that everyone who requests a license gets a license. We have no problem with that. And the way we manage that process is there's very little user intervention required by Chad, myself, or any of the admin team. All access and license requests are handled through ServiceNow. And it's really, as are any Active Directory groups required to manage the projects within Tableau. So any of our secure groups, any of our data classification groups are all managed through that. We also have data managed at source through GCP for data governance and security, and that ties in really well with live data connections through to Tableau. So, okay, that everyone requests a license gets a license. Creators, when you get a license, you have a minimum. You have to complete your minimum training in 90 days. It's about a 20-hour commitment, and it is expected that you do it, and we do keep an eye on it. Any creators who do not complete their training or who don't use their desktop license for 60 days automatically have their license downgraded to either an Explorer or a viewer based on their usage. This allows us to really tightly manage, keeps our costs in line and allows us to tightly manage who is involved in the community, so that if they get a license and they're not super engaged in being a community member, we're not going to be investing a huge amount of money in them until they're ready to do it. But as soon as they're ready to do it, then we are all in on them. The next, really kind of the next one we move into is comprehensive training. And we do, and we're going to actually give you a quick see at some of our training tools, because it's some pretty neat stuff. So the mandatory training for all creators is Tableau Desktop 1 and 2, delivered through e-learning. We provide licenses. Everyone who gets a new license gets a new creator license, gets a license for a year for the training. The viewers and the explorers are optional, but we are considering making one of the lessons, one of the badges within e-learning Tableau, the consumer. We're considering making it mandatory, and we certainly urge everyone to take the free version of it. But we want everyone to get the badge as well. That course alone, for anyone who has an enterprise base, that course alone is worth the 1 hour commitment in learning what you can do with Tableau and how to interact with Tableau in a enterprise environment. Things like creating custom views of dashboards and subscribing to them, and adding comments and commenting on dashboards directly within the dashboard rather than downloading it to a PowerPoint and emailing it back and forth. There's just a lot of really nice features available in there. So I don't know who's familiar with it, but we have a platform called Degreed, which is our learning platform. It's got, hundreds of thousands of classes sourced from all sorts of online learning platforms. Everyone at ATB, all team members, permanent team members, have access to the platform, and we govern our Tableau at ATB learning environment through that. And as well as that, I know you all get a lot of questions on, why doesn't my dashboard work? What's wrong with this? How do I get access to, how do I get access to Tableau? How do I connect to this data source? So whenever we get those questions, we now create an FAQ and make it a course and assign the course to the person, so that everyone has to do training to answer their own questions. We try not to be in a place where we are answering questions directly for people. So I'm just going to take a quick segue here and go take a look at our degree learning environment. I think, Shane, this might be the first time you're seeing it all too. So this is, and of course I've got it because I'm blind as a bat, I've got it zoomed out pretty big here. But this is our centralized learning environment for, can you all see this? Can someone just give me a wave if you can see this? All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So what we've got is it's broken into a number of sections. Welcome to Tableau, which really covers courses for all of your basic things like configuring your Tableau server GCP connections, going into your security tokens within Tableau server and adding those connections, right? People ask, we often get the question, I have my desktop re-imaged, what's my Tableau license information? Well, we actually have a course for that, and it takes you to a dashboard which we rather, I mean, I just thought it was hilarious to do this, but it's a hello, my name is, and it's just like a great big sticker that goes on your shirt. And of course it's going to load slowly because I'm sharing my screen. So, and it really is, but this answers all your basic questions. So this is one of our key tools, and it says, this, and it answers all your questions. This is my license key. If I've never, if I don't have one here, this is the problem, right? This is my e-learning key. If it's active, I can use Tableau e-learning and it takes you to it. It tells you when your e-learning expired. And it also does things like saying, all the training I need is on our degree learning platform, which takes you right back to our degree platform. If I need access issues, I fill in a ServiceNow ticket. We manage all of our access through ServiceNow for tickets, security. Every single issue is managed through one set of ticket portals, which greatly simplified our lives. And we never, ever, all we ever do is say, fill in a ticket. Half the time, all the answer to everything. Most of the answers that Chad and I have are either assigning a course or fill in a ticket, and then we handle it that way. It allows us to manage our queues pretty effectively. But we have all sorts of, other tools that we've made available to our users. For example, we often get a question of who's using my dashboard, right? And I know there's ways you can go and you can click on the tripled up button on the dashboard to see the e-numbers or the user IDs of everyone who's viewed it. But we've also got a dashboard built, which again takes advantage of Tableau's PostgreSQL database backend and lets you go and look at any dashboard and any project within the company and look at the user activity that's been happening on it. So we can really see who the top users are and who's using it, how popular is it, which versions are popular. Everyone can create views on this, and this was really helpful for us in tracking the activity on our COVID-19 projects that occurred just over the last couple of months. This was it was a great, and again, rather than saying who's using my dashboard, we tell people to come here and look it up themselves. It's because self-service is so key to everything we do here at ATB. We also scroll through, we've got all the courses, all the badges that from Tableau e-learning that are available. We've got them all linked through here. We've got the Tableau e-learning for creators, which is our mandatory creator training. We also, I don't know if you've ever seen Maria Brock's Tableau student guide. It's just one of those fascinating, fantastic resources for a very quick onboarding onto Tableau. We've made it available to all of our users because it's just as public on the internet, and we just took advantage of it to share knowledge. We've got e-learning plans all laid out for all the different badges. And if you haven't taken them, please take the community leader, take the business leader, take the consumer. These are courses that really tell you how to establish a practice at ATB. And then we have sections on tips and tricks around the web and advanced courses. We're sending a lot of people to Chantilly Juggernaut's Design Secret webinars, which have really changed the flavor of the dashboards that are available at ATB because people love to use this and create more modern stories. Lots and lots of stuff in here. So I'm going to jump back to the presentation. Sorry, I can talk a lot, and I'm sorry about that there, gang. Finally, kind of the last part of our slide is our presentation is on strong community support. Oops, let's just jump back again. Is on strong community support. So we use the community leader roadmap, the roadmap, the Tableau roadmap that's in the community leader course to guide our work. And we've come up with multiple channels for people to interact and work with us. So we've got a Google Currents G+ community site where people ask us, we share ideas and thoughts, and people ask us questions and chat with us. We also have a dedicated chat room on Google Chat for our creators just to interact with us. We have an intranet portal, of course. We've got some specialized degree learning groups for people who are creators or just have very targeted needs. We also have once for our users who have created Tableau, like end user Tableau content, they are also creating courses within our degree platform that people will take courses on how to use the dashboard. So for example, one of our teams has a series of incentive dashboards, and they wrote courses on how to interpret the data and how to use it and posted it all on there. So we circle back to Degreed for all of our learning and community building that way as well. I host weekly office hours with Chad and a few other key people at ATB. I just came out of it today about 2 hours ago. We also we host bi-weekly engagement sessions with each of our key stakeholder groups, and that's really part of our self-service insights team. So we meet for half an hour every day with one of our stakeholder groups, and really we have 10 or 11, so it kind of works out to be about every 2 weeks, and that's to keep our fingers in, you know, the pie of what they're doing and what they're working on, and how can we help them. And then from there we can, we can say, you have a problem, how would we solve this? You know, how would we solve this? It keeps us engaged and really gets engagement from our users. And finally, of course, you know, we've done in the past, we do Tableau days once or twice a year. We've done road shows all over the province, of course, pre-COVID and pre-economic downturn. We don't travel as much anymore, but we have done the road show. We've been all over the province for this stuff. It's been a great opportunity to really drive engagement for all this. Okay, so the great aha moments. Again, this is the great idea for Shane. If you don't like Shane much, you should love him. He's fantastic. How can you not like Shane? He's the best. All right, so one of the first one we had was that, and Chad's going to jump in here for a whole bunch of these, so you don't have to listen to me all the time. Find people or hire people that are passionate about business intelligence. This is really the big win for us. And we found people in ATB who are brilliant visual designers and just want to share this knowledge, including one person who will remain nameless, who was certainly was either going to go work for Pixar or work there for a short while. So very, very talented visual designers. But, you know, find people who are passionate about their BI. They drive their quality, their content, user uptake and adoption, and their community. And they are the key to a successful rollout. So we find them, and we foster them, and we nurture them. Chad?
Yeah, so the other thing is working with your data governance team. I hope that you have a data governance team. If you don't, you know, that's something you want to do. But one of the things that we found was with our data governance team, they had a data classification model, and that really fit best in regards to how we secure content within Tableau. We're used to, if you want to say a Windows type environment, folders, subfolders, you can secure things and open things at so many different levels. When we came into this journey, we were a little caught off guard, I'd say, and in regards to how we were managing our content. And I kind of feel like our data governance team, as they rolled out, because we were moving so quickly and moving in parallel a lot of times with so many changes at ATB, you know, a lot of times you're maybe going back a block and turning right in order to catch back up to the to some of the changes. And one of these was data governance, data classification model, and this really helped. As an example, when we get fully there, we're going from over 100 Active Directory groups down to 12. So a huge management from a management perspective as an administrator, that makes my life a whole lot easier, as well as my team members that really help out in our security side of things. The other thing about our data classification model is about sharing data. The old thought mindset was, you know, this is my data, and it didn't matter whether you were in finance or treasury or one of the IT areas. These areas all thought their data was their data and not ATB's data. And so as we work with the different business layers, areas that we really work to help them understand that it's ATB's data, and as long as we're meeting proper security protocols and classification, that we can work well in opening that data up for others to consume it as needed. And so, as you know, Tableau's the server and shared data sources and classifying your data or certifying your data sets, you know, it falls really well into this type of model. So the other thing is avoid style guides and formatting rules. Let people be creative, and it sounds simple, but it can be difficult. You almost want to micromanage at times, right? No, that's not right, because I've done it for 10 years this way. No, please. So give some freedoms there. You know, one of the things I've loved and respect are a lot of the blogs and webinars that we're able to even get from Tableau. There's lots of other sources out there, But a couple of the ones that have been highlights to me over the past couple of years have been a blog on colorblind and use of colors. The other was using bands, big ass numbers. And those sessions were all great. And if you get to join the live sessions, I'd say the blogs don't quite, they just don't do it justice, but the bands are really good in regards to that. So the other thing that we had was around basic layouts and use of PowerPoints, and Don's actually going to talk a little bit about that and what he's been doing with our community around that.
I sure am. Thanks, Chad. So just kind of the last few points we have on here. When it comes, training is so key to being successful with Tableau for your enterprise users. Everyone thinks they know how to do this stuff, and very few people do. And you all know how complicated Tableau can be to do things. There's lots of tricks and things you don't think of, and even that experienced users don't think of. And on top of all that, there are things that experienced creators don't ever think about because they're not consuming data. They're only ever they're creating content and sharing it, but they aren't someone who just logs in to get the information they need to make their next best decision. So there's, the training is essential, and really make it mandatory. People are fantastic, but they are also not going to do in a work environment and that they don't have to do. So if you suggest strongly to take a course, they're really not going to take, and that's just human nature. We all have limited hours to do stuff in. The people who are, the people you've hired who are passionate about BI, they'll take the courses, but you've got to have everyone taking the courses. So make it mandatory. And again, there's a lot of, everyone thinks they know how to do this stuff. Everyone thinks they know what they need. Everyone thinks when they come to you with a dashboard that says, I need a dashboard that does this. I'm sure you all know this, but keep asking them why, because most of the time it's for, there's a lot of underlying assumptions that you need to get them to get past, to change the status quo, to stop thinking in the old way of doing things. It's not helpful for them to try and recreate spreadsheets in Tableau. And that is not an uncommon request. I'm sure you all get them, right? I can't make Tableau display more than 54 columns on here when I do, 54 columns of data and then custom, in code aggregations. Well, why? Well, because I only know how to look at data as a spreadsheet. So let's take the time to talk about the decisions you're making and the questions you're trying to answer. Practically speaking, that's what you're going to use a dashboard for, to make your next best decision or to answer a question that someone answered of you. So if you know what those questions are, make a dashboard that answers those questions and only answers those questions. Make 10 dashboards if you have to on the same data set. We're going to take a moment and just pause here for questions because I can't see the Q&A thing, so I actually don't know if there's any questions or comments floating around.
We currently don't have any questions at the moment, Donal.
Oh, that's okay. Well, that's fine then. We're so fantastic and interesting. We've overwhelmed you with information.
Well, I want to say thank you to Donal O'Byrne and to Chad Walter for that window into their journey. That was very interesting. I know I definitely got some good information from that presentation. The fact that you were talking about mandatory training for creators and showing everyone the usage metrics, that's such a good idea. So thank you very much for that insight.
We can actually give you a quick show on that one. I can quickly scroll through.
Yeah. Sure, thank you.
We have here. So this is one of the tools that Chad uses.
Yeah, that's the money one.
That's the money one. This is the one that Brandy loves. You know what, Chad? This is one of the tools.
I get asked so much about it.
Manager a server.
So one of the other points that we were talking about is don't try and always reinvent the wheel, right? And so I found this out on Tableau Public in one of the communities. And this is my daily snapshot that I get sent to me every day. And it's a combination of things. I get to see, what is our typical user traffic on a daily basis. So I know as well, maybe something's not broken. If maybe it hasn't been reported up to me, I'm able to have some of that visibility into it. It also allows me to kind of keep an eye on our licensing. Over on the right-hand side on that snapshot, you'll see new users today. And, typically it's happening on an ongoing basis. And sometimes it's one user. And, one of those moments when all of a sudden I see 10 or 15 go in, those are the moments when I'm like, I better go have a look and do some license analysis and see where we're at and make sure that, you know, if we need to do an increase or manage some of our users. I can also check in. We have separate team members that work really hard to keep the security and licensing component away from my day-to-day business, my day-to-day tasks. And so I get to check in with them as well. It'll spur me on. The other thing, we get to see what's happening out there and in regards to different workbooks, their usage. There was one where I saw, like, you know, some drastic number of users hitting it, you know, a big spike on views on it, and, you know, what's going on, how did they achieve that in a single day, kind of thing. And so it'll just help me kind of keep an eye on the day-to-days. The other one that you see on the upper, I think it's, I can't remember what the name of that chart is, but it's basically just a dot matrix there for us in regards to our lineage on the day of activity. And I can see what our users are doing, and typically I'll be able, if I have any last minute maintenance I want to do on the server, I need to do some sort of an outage, or I want to run maybe even a backup out of window typically. You know, I can pick up on what time might be best when our user point is low and when the workload is lower. So this is sort of, this is actually a very helpful tool. This does both daily as well as you can get, I think the view includes monthly, and you can even get it, I think it also has a yearly. I was looking at it the other day on a more of a long-term basis kind of viewpoint to get some of the statistics for us. So it was very helpful for that.
We do have one question now. How do you track the 60-day period where creators are supposed to start using Tableau?
That's a great, so we have a plugin that it exists. Chad, you can explain this one better. I'm sorry.
Sure. So on the server, so desktop, you can trigger it to point to the Tableau server for usage recordings. And so it reports every few hours. I think ours is set to report back to the server every 4 hours. And it will bring up, it's one of the Tableau default system administrator views. So we can see what creator licenses haven't been used. I believe it defaults the filter to 90 days. And then we can, you can adjust it. So we'll adjust that filter so we can monitor if we're tighter on licenses at the time. We may look at the 60 to 90 range where we want to, you know, try and draw back some of those licenses that aren't being used currently.
The other thing we do is when we license a new user, we assign them the training and degreed with a 90-day deadline. And that's reasonably new for us. Before, what we did was we would assign them the training and give them, and we would track it manually. But then we use the skill jar platform that Tableau uses to track their track all the licensing for the e-learning, and we can see who's taken, like, exactly where they are in every single class and when the last time they logged in was, and when they done their training, and they say, well, you know, I try and I log in and it doesn't work, and we can go in and say, oh, we looked at it, you haven't logged in 2.5 months, so maybe you want to, you know, you could probably, you know, find time. But we are quite strict about it because we don't, it's about keeping control of our costs. So we built a couple of dashboards which we ran last year during our big drive to enable our users. So this was one of them. This is one of the dashboards that we tracked, and we downloaded the data daily from SkillJar. And this is what we're using just to, and now this is kind of a hot mess. This is for me to keep an eye on. This is just made to answer my questions. So we can keep track of, you know, who's completed their training and who's still outstanding, you know, and keep track of our various license keys for training, who's done their desktop training, who's done classroom training, who's done it by desktop 1, 2, 3 and prep. Because desktop 1 and 2 were the only mandatory classes we had. But then we also gave them a tool to look at their data in-house. And so you'd have a dashboard that that was set to their user ID, and they would just open it up and they'd see their status updated every single day. But we also gave their managers a view on this that would say, you know, these are your team members with outstanding training, and this is how long they have to complete it. And if they don't complete it, we are going to take back their license. And let me tell you, over Christmas, there was a pretty big panic when because it was all about December 15th when this all came due, and there was a huge rush over Christmas to get it all done. And we know, of course, we're reasonable about it, but if people don't don't need to do the training. They probably don't need a complicated and expensive creator license. So this is all done straight in Tableau. This was done with views and just some spreadsheets and filtering and subscriptions.
Thank you. You've kind of spoke to this already, but there is another question. How do you handle those users who don't use their license? For example, they don't log into Tableau for 3 months. Do you have a policy to revoke their license so that other people can use it? I know you've kind of spoke to that already, but would you like to add something to that?
There's not a lot to add. We do have a policy on it, and it's quite clear, and we don't bend a lot on that one. And it's expressed up front to everybody when they get their license. It's expressed every time we have the communications and our stakeholder engagement sessions, so that it's really clear, and it really does force people to be engaged in using Tableau in their everyday life, because it's not just about having the platform, it's about changing the way you work so that you're using Tableau to drive your next best decision.
And we have a welcome email they get right at the beginning. So whenever they come in to get their Tableau license, they get a welcome email, and we reiterate some of that information to them so that it's not something that, you know, they didn't know about. It's pretty clearly defined. Also, our team that works in that area specifically for our licensing and security, they will reach out and let them know ahead of time that, you know, this is going to be happening. And sometimes they'll come back and say, yeah, no, that's fine. Other times they'll say, I'm actually just starting a project next week, and I'm going to need it again anyways. So we'll, you know, hold off on that revoking of a license and things like that.
Or we done, you know, there's even cases where we said, well, we'll revoke your license and give it back to you in 2 weeks when you need it, and then you get another 90 days to complete your training. It really is about being flexible to support the business and let the business, you know, support the business the best way possible.
Okay, great. Thank you guys very much again for taking the time to share your journey with us this afternoon. Brandy and Shane, would you guys like to do your presentation now, or should we go straight into Fuyo's presentation?
I can just fly through mine if you like, and get to the real important ones, which are our customers and Fuyos. So I can probably only take about 10 minutes max, Tank.
Okay, thanks a lot, Shane.
But first off, you know, thank Don and Chad. You know, Don, all those nice words you said. I've got an indirect transfer in your email box. So I appreciate it. Good work, guys. But in all seriousness, working with ATB, and I can speak with Brandy as well, has been fantastic learning experience for both of us. But really to watch how how their journeys really evolved quickly, and having Chad and Dawn as part of the team has been really not just inspirational to watch, but they've been really pushing the data experience throughout the organization, and they've really done an amazing job of bringing data to the forefront for the whole organization and making self-serve so important. And it's really done an amazing job for that organization, right up to the CEO. They're recognized as doing an amazing job. So congratulations, guys, and thanks. All right, let's see if I can work Zoom. If everybody can, I'll let you know when I see my screen. I'm gonna start this off first. All right, give me 1 sec. All right, give me the thumbs up if you see impact of data. We're all good?
Yeah.
All right. All right, thanks, Brandy. So quickly, you know, as we go through this pandemic and we're continue to see tons of data come at us on a daily basis through news feeds and social media, the impact of data is continuing to be immense. And if you've seen a lot of things, whether it's on LinkedIn or on the internet, about what's going to happen after this is over and how important data is going to be. And I just wanted to take a quick second to, you know, capture a couple things here from McKinsey and Forrester. And some of the things that they've been talking about is how important data is going to be post-COVID. And data analytics, as they've said here, is the fuel that will power digital transformation. It's the talent that accelerates progress and the opportunity to build on current skills. And data literacy is really going to drive the data usage and enable organizations to be successful post-COVID. And how are they going to actually transform themselves as they go forward? And one of the things that I thought that was really interesting, and we've heard this probably before, is that those insights-driven organizations grow at a 7 times faster than those that aren't data-driven. We can compare that to a lot of organizations that came from data. So, if you look at Google and Facebook and Apple and so on and so forth as part of that, but a lot of organizations that didn't come from a data that weren't born in data, I'll say, have made a great transformation in order to become a data transformation or a data organization. And those that have made that pivot are the ones that will be most successful. So in this time, I just wanted to quickly, in the next 8 days, this is going to unfortunately end, but hopefully we'll renew it. But what we've been able to do is put out some free e-learning for all our customers across the globe to be able to take advantage of enhancing those data skills, not only for yourself, but for your organization. And what we've been able to do is provide that Tableau e-learning and Tableau certification at 50% off for those users that want to take part. Again, it does end June 30th, but I thought, we do have 8 days. If you sign up today, that means you have 90 days of free e-learning to take advantage of. And if you are connected to anybody on LinkedIn and you've seen all these role badges go up, connected to a lot of our great customers at ATB and Shaw and WestJet, and you'll see a ton of people posting their digital role badges that they've earned through the e-learning program in the curriculum that they've taken and the tests that they've passed. So it really does bode well for those organizations that are really taking part. So I just want to touch on it really quick to let everybody know that it's still available. And again, if you signed up over the next, before June 30th, you'll have 90 days to do as much e-learning as possible. So what is it? Those that have seen e-learning in the past, we made a pivot to where it's not just course-based, it's also role-based. And when I mention badges, this is what it means. We have 12 badges that are available on our on-site, and it helps measure the skills based on the role that you may have within your organization. So you can earn those badges. You need 80% on the skill assessment at the end of the course, and when you do pass that test, you'll get a digital role badge, as you see here, and be able to present that on LinkedIn and other social media sites as well. So what's in the e-learning path? Basically what it is the fastest way to become proficient in Tableau. And as you can see here, each of the roles has a curriculum associated with it. So the site administrator has certain paths. Just be aware that some of those role badges do require virtual online training, which is an extra cost. But I think 9 of the 13 role badges do not require that. How do you sign up? Just Google Tableau e-learning. You'll simply need to put in the 2020 e-learning to get the 90 days free. Sign in, create a persona, and away you go. But let's just kind of talk a little bit, and this is a pivot to Fuyo and Jason's presentation in terms of talking about data and COVID. When we're in a crisis, and when a global crisis, country crisis, or a city crisis, we always turn to data to understand what's happening, what's changed. And we look at this outbreak and what are some of the consequences, what are the triggers, and those conversations that happen around public health and economic and the business crisis that we're all experiencing today. And thank God that we see that what's happening in Canada versus what might be happening south of the border. We've done a very good job of managing what's happening. A lot of that is being done with data and making those quick decisions based on what's happening in the public sector. So what we've created, and some of you may have seen this, I know I've presented to a couple of my customers, is that there's a data hub available for users for free, as well as the ability to download this data to utilize it in many of your analyses, to be able to actually see what's happening maybe in your environment, in your area, in different countries. So I encourage you, I'm not going to click on a link today, but we can send this out. You can see the link as I just hover, but it's really just Google COVID-19 Data Hub, and it'll give you a ton of amazing resources to do with business, geography, economics. There's like more than I can say in terms of what's presented there, and a lot of that data is accessible to you to download and use, and a ton of it's right up to date to the day. So I encourage you, if you're looking at finding more data to analyze your business when you get back to work, that's a great place to start. And some organizations that are using that, for example, are the City of Edmonton. That's available on their site. And just a little plug, I heard that Edmonton passed us the other day in terms of having more after cases, and then I think we passed them back yesterday. But just a little plug there, as well as the Toronto Public Health have actually done a great job of managing providing this information back to the public through Tableau. And this particular one on Tableau Public has, I think, over 2 million views since it was posted. And that data is up to date on a daily basis, because this is about 3 weeks old when I posted this. New York State, if you've all been watching CNN and you see the daily Cuomo presentation, we've done a ton of work in the background to help them see and understand their data. And it's been a progress. So again, there's a ton of great content out there that you can access. And I'm not going to kind of grade into it today because I wanted to kind of just show you a little bit about what's new. We didn't have time to do a demo today, but next time we'll kind of do that. But I just want to touch on a couple things. If anybody's actually downloaded 2020.2 or for desktop, you'll notice that it's been a big release for us in terms of some of the key capabilities that we've been able to release. And one of them has been what we used to call the object model that we've been talking about for years. Now what we call relationships with your data, so relationship. And really what it allows you to do is to take adding new data capabilities to Tableau will help you more easily analyze your data across multiple tables. It basically adds a new logical layer and adds relationships to the data sources. So you can create multiple table models in the form of a star or Snowflake schemas with multiple fact tables at different levels of detail. And some of the key things that it's really been able to add to Tableau are data sources that are easier to build, maintain, and analyze, easier to make relationships and with analysis and experience and more intuitive. The data source page, view data in the window, in data pane, and it's context aware for your queries. So anybody that's played with this, it's a big step for us in terms of taking the data and actually making relationships between them instead of just joining the data like we used to in the past. And one of the other key features as well is metrics, basically allowing us to take the data headlines from your dashboard. It's really made for mobile first, really easy to create. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go and see the quick 5-minute video that's online as well, because you always have the latest data. It actually refreshes in the background. And it's really great for executives who are just looking for up-to-date status reports on certain KPIs that they're really interested in. But also, I think it was last week or the week before, Brandy, if I'm not mistaken, we released our 2020.3 beta. Tons of great features, as you can see on the right side of the screen. But one of the coolest things that I thought I'd just kind of quickly point out is that now we're able to write back to the database with Tableau Prep. One of the things that's been requested from Tableau Prep is when it was initially released, instead of writing back just to Tableau server, now you can use Tableau Prep to write back to the first initial 7 databases that we've put out here today. And a couple other maybe little things, spatial files, unions now. Of course, you're going to see a lot more of the Salesforce and Einstein Analytics integration as we continue to move forward. And of course, now we've got some predictive modeling functions that are available on Tableau as well. All right, did I keep it under 10 minutes? Oh yeah, look, 9.5, not bad. How was that? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Amazing.
And Brandy did present. I did it all by myself, Brandy. How's
You
that?
did such a good job. Way to go.
Yeah,
I'm really
right.
proud of you.
Hi, Shane. We actually have a question for you if you have just a minute more.
I'm going to give that one to Brandy. What is it?
For
come
Tableau
on.
e-learning badges, do you have to start at the beginning of the learning series, or can you start with an assessment to find the level within the badge where you are at and then to learn more from that point onwards?
So just to define the question, so if I'm looking at becoming an analyst, for an analyst example, you need to take desktop 1, 2, and 3, I believe, and there's a few others in there. So are you asking, can I start at desktop 2 and move my way forward because I've maybe taken desktop 1 prior? And if that's the true question, then that is, you can skip desktop 1. You don't have to actually flow right through the curriculum in order to take the assessment. I hope that answered it. You don't have to have a checkbox in each.
Yes, she said you answered her question. That's great. Thanks, Shane. And also, I wanted to say thank you for that presentation and for drawing our attention to some of those new features. The write back in Tableau Prep, great. And the new predictive analytics, and for drawing our attention to the Tableau e-learning that's still available to us and the COVID-19 Data Hub. Thank you, Shane.
No problem. I'm glad to be here.
So next I want to introduce Fuyo Watanabe from AE Data Group. She's going to be talking about Mask Makers YYC, Calgary's sewing community comes together to make cloth masks during the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, Fuyo.
Hi guys. I almost forgot to unmute myself there. Yeah, so during the lockdown for the pandemic, I got involved in this group called Mask Makers YYC. We started sewing cloth masks for giving away to people who were essential frontline workers. And I ended up using some of my technology background in this volunteer enterprise. So I thought I would do a little bit of storytelling and show you guys what went down. Here is my presentation here. Let me share my screen. Got to figure out which order to do everything in. Okay. Are you looking at my toddler's title slide?
Yep.
Great. Okay, I'm just going to. All right, so Mask Makers YYC. Hang on, my focus is on the wrong window. So Mask Makers YYC, we were a volunteer team sewing cloth face masks during the pandemic. We ended up making 41,358 free masks, and we're not done yet. Honestly, I think we may reach 45,000. We still have a bunch of stuff in flight. So for anyone who's been living under a rock, that's what a cloth face mask looks like. We put out a call for a bunch of people to help us, and this is the story of how we got there. So how did it all begin? On March 11th, now I know this is an audience of people who like looking at data, so I'm kind of hoping that a lot of you saw this chart. This chart came out of the Journal of American Medicine, and it really drove home for me the state of what had happened in China in terms of the pandemic, and then also we were getting numbers coming out of Italy at this time, and this chart really drove everything home. So when I was looking at it, the yellow bars are showing when patients in Wuhan were diagnosed with COVID. So what you're seeing is these patients came in, you can see that the numbers are growing by the date of diagnosis. So the date axis is along the bottom here. Now on January 23rd, the city is shut down. So that's when they decided, okay, things are not good. They thought they had about 300 cases based on how many people were diagnosed, but the reality, and so the blue bars in this chart are actually showing when the onset of symptoms started. So the blue bar, so for every person that came in and got diagnosed, they asked, the CDC in China asked, when did you start feeling symptoms? And that's what you're seeing in the blue bars. So everybody who came in, they got their tests, they tested, if they tested positive, they were asked, when did you start feeling the symptoms come on? And that pushes the curve back. And what you actually see is that they shut the city down on the 23rd because they thought they had about 250, 300 cases. They really actually had more closer to 2,500 cases live at that time. This is such a classic lagging indicator. When you see this curve, it's the type of data where you can't measure the impact of it until it's too late. So when I saw these numbers coming in, and I thought, okay, so and as we learned more and more about the COVID-19 virus and how it spreads, we were also hearing that there's a pre-symptomatic period. So before you feel symptoms, there's a few days in front of that. And so as I was looking at this chart, I was like, man, so the time to start reacting would have been, down here somewhere where you can't even see anything on the chart yet. And honestly, that really kind of freaked me out. So by that weekend, Calgary schools were closed. And then the following week, most of us were working from home. And so the good news is that that message kind of got across to everyone sort of within the same time frame. So we were lucky. We were hunkered down at home. We were watching the pandemic news, and I saw this post from an old friend, and this is someone that I hadn't seen in 29 years. But she posted on her Facebook, "Can you sew?" And I thought, well, yeah, I can sew. I have a sewing machine. So Dr. Christine Gibson is one of several Calgary physicians who was looking to have cloth face masks made in case of a PPE shortage. So we already knew that there were breakouts in New York and Washington State, and many US hospitals were asking for homemade PPE. And it's really scary to think about. We think we're a very modern, the first world nation, and that this kind of thing can't happen to us. But even in Toronto, there was a hospital asking for 1,000 masks per week to be made so that they could give them out to patients being discharged and preserve their official PPE for the hospital workers. So at the time, I mean, it's kind of funny looking back now, because a lot of this it feels like so far in the rear view mirror. But at the time, it seemed like a serious crisis was happening. And so knowing that this could be coming to us, we decided to start up a group to start making masks. So Mask Makers YYC was born. We put together a Facebook group. On day one, we had 239 members who joined, and today we have over 6,500 members. We invite people to come join our group if they want to volunteer to sew masks. Also, if you want to request masks, you also have to join the group to get the link to make a request. So at first, we had people sewing any style of mask. They were using their own fabric. After a while, we started to realize that we were getting all kinds of crazy stuff coming in. We had masks coming in that were big enough to wrap around your head to make a neck warmer, masks that wouldn't fit an adult, that would barely fit, a 5-year-old. So we realized that, if we really wanted to make a difference and increase our output, we needed to have some standards. So we settled on a single style of mask, and we started pushing everyone to make this mask. So what we did was we had a physician take apart a paper surgical mask and measure all the dimensions. We asked that all the masks have a nose wire so that you could create a good seal around the face. So we know that cloth masks don't filter as well as, official personal protective gear. So the one thing we want to make sure is that if you are using a cloth mask, that you are filtering through the cloth and not around the sides or out of gaps in the bottom. So at the very least, if it's whether you believe it's a 30% efficiency or 50 or 70, that whatever you are breathing is coming in through the mask and not through gaps in the mask. So we felt it was really important to make sure that it fits. So we requested a nose wire in every mask. We wanted to have a pocket so that you could have a filter put inside if you wanted to. And then the last thing we insisted on was casing on the edges of the mask so that people who can't sew would be able to replace the ties. So one of the things we started seeing was once medical workers were asked to wear masks for their entire shift, you saw a lot of people complaining that continual masking was hurting their ears. And then you saw all kinds of gadgets for saving ears. People were 3D printing ear savers. People were making little headbands with buttons on them. And so we said, well, this is crazy. Let's just give them a choice. If they don't want to have elastics wrapped around their ears all day long because it hurts, we'll just let them pull the elastics out and put in a shoelace or a tie or whatever they want to use. So that, again, was part of our design. And one of the requirements arguments was that a person who doesn't sew needed to be able to replace that tie. So I've got a photo here of different things that the average person had handy. They could use a zip tie or a screwdriver or a pencil. You could use tweezers. You know, most of us who do our sewing and our crafting, we have fancy things like bodkins and crochet hooks. And there was a big argument about, oh, well, you know, the average person wouldn't be able to thread this tie, so we need to do it for them. And I thought, okay, this is crazy. Like, you know, I gave one to my husband and my 5-year-old, and I said, well, what would you guys do if you got this? And, you know, they did it in a completely different way than I ever would have thought of. It involved a pencil crayon and Scotch tape, but they were able to do it. So, you know, we felt confident that this is something that anyone that receives a mask would be able to manage. So after we settled on our pattern, we actually had an indie filmmaker who volunteered. He helped us shoot a YouTube tutorial. So the problem at that time with mask patterns, there were hundreds out there on YouTube, but all of them were making one little mask at a time. Some of them were, you know, 10 little pieces that you had to cut out and stitch together. Some of them were 17 pages of instructions. We needed a method for producing masks in large batches. So we created a video showing, you know, how to make 5 or 10 at a time. And this was really fun because the camera gear that these guys came with was crazy, and they got up real close. And, you know, I had a hard time even getting my fingers in to use the sewing machine because they were so close to me with their equipment. But it turned out really nicely. And I think it helped a lot of people sort of increase their speed, and a lot of these techniques were things that were new. It was all new to me. Someone else had given me these suggestions and said, why don't you do it this way? Why don't you just, instead of doing one piece at a time, why don't you sew one piece after the other through your serger and not even cut them? And I thought, oh, well, I had never even tried that, but it worked. And so we made a little video showing how to do that. And it seemed to be very popular. So next we experimented with the idea of washing and cutting the fabric so that the people sewing wouldn't have to do that. One of the more difficult things, if you don't have a dedicated place for sewing, if you are taking out your sewing machine and putting it on the kitchen table, or, you know, setting it up in your bedroom or something, cutting fabric is actually very difficult. You need a big space. We're talking about meters of fabric. You need to be able to lay it out, measure it accurately. Sometimes you have to iron it. It takes a lot of space. So we experimented with this idea. We said, you know, what if we get the fabric washed and cut down, and then even if you are just a very beginner or a very occasional sewist, it becomes a lot easier. So I took a bunch of fabric and I washed it, and I cut this stack of pre-cut fabric that was the right size for making our masks. I did it all by hand. My hand was very sore afterwards, but we handed these out to a little pilot group, and people told us that it was so much easier, and that's all they wanted to use. So then the mask pre-pack was born. This little package contains the materials needed to create 10 masks. So we got really lucky, and 2 local businesses came on board. Fishman's Personal Care Cleaners, they agreed to wash all the fabric that was donated. So that was amazing because, you know, washing stuff in the washing machine is one of my least favorite things to do. So having a big industrial cleaner able to do that for us was amazing. And then Designer's Choice is a custom drapery shop, and they also joined our group, and they raised their hand and they said, well, what can we do? And I was like, you know, if we could get these cut and packaged, that would be so helpful. And they agreed to do that for us. They cut all the packages, and they even serged the ends for us because they had seamstresses who came in and volunteered their time as well. So this is the little package that we send out. Now that we had these packs, we needed to find a way to efficiently distribute them. So this is where technology enters the picture. So I work in data. I was like, oh, no problem. I'm going to build a system. We're gonna be able to take orders for these little packs and get them out. And this is what I thought it was going to look like. I thought, okay, people are going to join our Facebook group. They're going to put in a request in Google Forms if they want to sew, and we'll flip that over to Jira, make a little ticket, and then we'll load everything into Snowflake, and we'll do some analysis in Tableau. And I thought this is going to be great. I approached all of these companies for free licensing for our not-for-profit endeavor, and all of them stepped up and said, yep, no problem. Jira said, if you use it past March of 2021, you're going to have to pay. And I said, that's fine. If I'm still making masks in 2021, I'm going to kill myself. So all of these companies really stepped forward and helped us out. So this is what I thought. I thought, okay, yeah, this is going to be so beautiful. And this is actually what we ended up with as our process. And it grew to be so complicated, it's not even funny. This process, it was like a full-time job to manage it all. But it really, once we got it going, once all the heavy lifting was done, everything worked really well. So this drawing, so somebody asked on the Facebook group, said, hey, I really would like to know what you guys do behind the scenes. And I was like, well, I guess I could draw it out. And I simplified, I way oversimplified it. And I drew this little diagram. And even I was surprised at, what we're doing behind the scenes to make this all happen. So on the top right side, this is all how our supplies happen. So people donate money and we buy fabric, and some people donate fabric, and some people donate wire. And it goes through all of this to become those little pre-packs. This corner here is when somebody wants a mask and they put in a request. It goes into a Google form, and we have a team that coordinates all of that. We have a Facebook group here, so we have 2 admins and 3 moderators, I think. So this is just, all they do is approve members, they answer questions, they moderate comments. That's a massive job as well. But for this presentation, I'm just gonna concentrate on this top left corner here, which is what happens when a volunteer wants to sew for us. So a volunteer sewist will come in, and if they want to request supplies, so they have the option, they can sew from their own fabric stash. And the amazing thing is that our first probably 3 weeks, we didn't have any monetary donations. We had very few fabric donations. All of these women were sewing up fabric that they had already on hand, and some of us, I won't name any names, but I'm definitely in this category. We had way too much fabric on hand anyways. So remember that all the fabric stores were closed at this time. The fact that we were able to sew for 3 weeks without having to purchase anything is kind of, it's amazing and it's awesome, but it's also kind of silly. It kind of just highlights how much hoarding goes on in my house. So anyways, when people ran out of fabric and started requesting supplies, we pointed them towards a Google form. We set up this form. And as I had envisioned in my head, I said, okay, let's pump this data into Jira. So we had a real-time push that would put it into Jira, and every line, every request became a ticket. And we had a team of people that would watch this, the Kanban board in Jira, and they would decide, okay, well, which depot do you want to pick up stuff from, your supplies from? And so they would coordinate between the depots and the sewist. Okay, your order's ready, go pick it up. And then the sewist would sew it, and then they would deliver it, or they could ask for a driver as well. So we had a lot of moving pieces to coordinate. So one of our goals was to make sure that the people sewing could concentrate on sewing. We had a lot of people who didn't sew who wanted to participate as well. So we said, you know what, we are going to take volunteer drivers. We're going to take volunteers to cut ties, to cut wire. Why put all of that on the unicorns that could sew? This long forgotten skill of being able to use a sewing machine. We didn't want all of the work to fall on the people that were sewing, and so we tried to spread it around a little bit. So when volunteers enter a request, it all goes into Google Forms. We just built a very simple form. Where do you live? Do you need supplies, or do you want someone to come pick up your completed items? And then how many packs do you need? And this form went through many iterations. And then the form data, we had real-time load, pushing it into Jira. Please don't ask me how it works because I conscripted a data engineering colleague of mine to do a lot of this for me. If any of you have ever worked with me, you know that I don't actually like Jira very much. So it's really strange that I chose to do this in Jira. I knew that in its most simple incarnation that we would probably be able to make this work for us. So I did have to lean on other people to help me a lot because I don't use it very much. I don't really like it that much, but it did end up working. So the form data comes in. We had this Kanban board set up with swim lanes for the different depots, the different locations that people could go to pick up supplies and to drop off finished masks. We had columns to show the backlog and then the different statuses. And so when the requests came in, they start on the left side, and then we just had people who would move it through the various processes and push it along to the right until it was complete. So each request comes in as a backlog item. The logistics team gets some clarification, and then they assign the ticket to a depot. The tickets go from waiting on depot. So these are all in my depot. I'm supposed to be getting, we made a keepsake mask for everyone. And so all these people have requested that they get a mask. So I have to go put labels on a bunch of masks and put them in my bin. And then once I've done that, I push the ticket over to waiting on pickup. And then one of the logistics people will email that person and say, okay, it's ready for you to pick up, and shoot that email off to the person who made the request. Some things get sent to a driver, so then we have a column for waiting on driver. When the request comes in, we try to manage it within a couple of days. So definitely a lot of us are working full-time jobs remotely. So it's not something where we can do this all day long, but we realize that there is an advantage to getting these supplies to the people quickly so that they can get their sewing done and then bring it back. So when we were running this off of Google Forms, we were handling 30 requests a week. And then once we moved it to go from Google Forms and into Jira and a little bit more easy to manage, we were running 30 a day, 30 a day with fewer people manning the board actually. So after we implemented the pre-packs and some technology, our ability to produce masks literally went off the charts. So we were averaging about 500 masks per day. And honestly, I thought that was really, really good. But once we started doing this, we were at 800 masks per day. So at our peak, we had a few days where we produced 1,000 masks in one day. So remember when I was talking about the hospital in Toronto that asked for 1,000 masks per week, and we thought, oh man, that's crazy. You know, well, that's Toronto, they're a big city, maybe they can manage it. But finding out that we were able to do 1,000 in a day kind of just, you know, knocked our socks off. So one of the bonuses of having all this technology and all this data captured is that now, you know, being a data and analytics nerd, I have all this data to analyze. So one of the first things I did was I started posting in our Facebook group a little status of, you know, how many masks were ordered. So this chart shows that there's 4,000 masks that have been requested. 344 people have asked for masks. And so we delivered 894. This is April 6th. So, you know, we used to have a status for delivered and ready. I kind of combined them. So, you know, we had basically about 25% of our requests were done, and 3/4 were still in the backlog. So that's what things look like. In the early days, we had way more demand than we had supply for. And then one of the things we captured when we asked people to fill out the order form, we did ask them, you know, well, you know, who are we sewing for? Because I knew that for a lot of the volunteers, it would be nice and motivating to understand, you know, where was all this effort going. So I started posting these little blurbs of, you know, we're healthcare aides, we're volunteering. I had to hide a lot of them because I didn't want to out anybody who was asking for cloth masks that that wasn't supposed to be asking. So after a while, I ended up just taking that right off the dashboard. And this is the latest version that I would have run. So now we've had 29,000 masks requested. We've fulfilled, I mean, the backlog now is so small that I can't even put a label on it. It's less than 1,000. I think it's 800 or so. But I tried to post this, every week, every few days, so that everyone who was working and volunteering could get a good idea of where we stood and how, what our progress was. This is something, so towards the end, I started really looking at the data once I was able to get things into Snowflake and compare our orders versus our supplies. That was really interesting to me. We got a lot of press, and I really wanted to analyze the impact that the various media outlets had when they published our story. So, and the one really big story, so we were featured on Global News in the middle of April, and I was really worried about that one. So it was Lauren Pullen that did this story for us, and when she was sitting down to set everything up, I said to her, if it's okay, could you please try to emphasize not that it's free masks, everybody come and get a free mask, but that it's a group of volunteers who are trying to produce masks, and what we really need is more volunteers, and we need more donations, and that's the story that I would like to get out. And she did an amazing job. And so you can see that when she did her piece on us, yeah, we did get a little bump in the number of people ordering masks, but we got this crazy jump in the number of people volunteering to help. And I smoothed this out. So the smooth line is a 5-day moving average, so that it's a little bit easier to comprehend. But you can see this massive spike right here in the background. So the background line is the actual daily true measures. So and it's funny because we got such a spike that of course we crashed the system. So then there's this massive dip the next day. But I showed this to her and I said, you did an amazing job. And I thought it really showed the power of the media and how well they handled it for us. We were mentioned by the mayor. We were on CTV News. We got little spikes here and there. When the mayor and the CTV story came out, a lot of people jumped on and said, "Oh, we want to order masks." So that's the sort of thing we were worried about, and so that's why I was really happy to see that that one news article where we had a little bit of input really worked out for us. This is a visualization. I love this thing. It's really difficult to it doesn't really do much as far as being able to quantify things, but I think it's just really pretty. So this is every single one of our sewing volunteers. Each one is a bubble. I'm going to flip over to Tableau and show it to you in Tableau because one of the fun things, are you still able to see it, or did the screen stop sharing?
Oh, it's still sharing.
Okay, so one of the neat things is the new animation features in Tableau. So I hadn't really been able to play with it too much, but when I built this guy, I was like, ooh, is that how that works? So let me show you how neat it looks. So I colored all of the bubbles based on the number of times the person dropped finished masks. So anyone who came once or twice to drop off masks is yellow. And anyone who came up to 5 times is this lighter green. And anyone who came 6 times or more to drop off masks is this dark green. And I love how it animates. But the really interesting thing to me is that it's not just the people that did a ton. So this lady here, Diane, she sewed over 1,000 masks for us. She came every week. She dropped off 100 masks for 10 weeks. She's 75 years old. She told us the craziest stories of the sorts of things that she used to sew back when she worked in costume design for the film industry. We did have quite a few people who sewed hundreds of masks for us. But the thing that I love is that all of these little bubbles that did 10 or 15 or 20, it all adds up. it all added up as well. So, you know, everyone who only did a little bit, they did 1 pack or 2 packs for us. That still added up to over 10,000 masks. I think it's a real testament to the power of everybody pitching in, even if it's just a little bit. This is, I added a little search so that you could find yourself if you wanted. Now, I got so busy that I didn't really, there's me. I only made 10 masks, you guys. But it turned out that running the group was so much work that that's all I could do. I really didn't get to touch my sewing machine beyond making the video. Okay, let's go back to the slides. Oh, lost my place. Sorry, guys. Where are we? There. Okay. So this is the last chart I did. So I really didn't have time until early June, I would say. So early June, I finally was able to get all the data together. We were going 12, 16 hours a day, just trying to keep everybody going, keeping things organized, purchasing fabric, getting orders fulfilled to send out to all the different people requesting. I finally sort of took a breath in early June and put all the data together. The orange line here is the number of orders. The blue line is the masks that we fulfilled. So you can see that we were always kind of chasing the orange line. Now, and we're almost there. So, you know, actually, we probably have fulfilled all of the orders by now. But the crazy thing is that there's a lag between when the masks come in. So the yellow line is the mask submissions. So when a person drops off their masks that they finished making, we let them sit for 3 days to make sure that if there's any virus on them, that nobody's going to get sick. I mean, we are touching, you know, hundreds of people's things that have been in hundreds of people's homes. So we were trying to be extra cautious. So there's a delay. They sit around, they come in, most of them don't have ties. So we have to add ties. I had no idea that the delay was hiding this massive stockpile of masks. So right about here is where I started looking at this number, and I got a little worried that people would be angry with us because we did not need to make all of these masks. They were in flight already, but we had like beat the number, that the quantity that we needed by far, like weeks ago. But I didn't even see it. I didn't know. So I mean, there you go. There's a good reason to stay on top of your numbers at all times, I guess. I'm shocked, to be honest with you. You know, when we started, we decided on June 1st that we were going to shut down. And on June 1st, I thought, oh yeah, we might make 25,000 masks, you know, maybe 30,000 at a stretch. And we were over 41,000 right now. Chances are, I mean, knowing what is out there and what's in flight, I think we're going to have over 45,000 masks. So looking back to the days where we thought, you know, 2,000 or 3,000 was so much, it's mind-boggling that we've come this far. So we had 525 sewists. We had about 100 people who were driving, cutting ties, or making wires for us. We had 3 Facebook moderators. We had 10 depot locations, past and present. So those tended to come and go, where people would volunteer and then they would have to go back to their real life, and they weren't able to continue. Right now we only have 4 locations. I had 3 people that I roped in to help me with the data and the technology, including you know, our good friend Tink. We have 2 people on the logistics team, and we have 4 members of the leadership team. We sent masks to Cargill, the families of the Cargill outbreak. We sent masks to a lot of the senior care and nursing homes, the Canada Post, the airport, We did hundreds of individual requests, and we had over 1,900 requests from people who put AHS as their employer. Now, that's not to say that they're using them in AHS facilities, because they don't approve of cloth face masks, but these are all people who are, you know, doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, who wanted face masks for, you know, maybe getting to work on transit, or going for groceries, or even just, you know, to make sure that they weren't making other family members sick. But we managed thousands and thousands of requests. I just have a couple of slides on the support that we got. So the Calgary Emergency Management Agency jumped on board really early for us. Chief Sampson, you may have seen him doing the COVID updates during when the city was under the state of emergency. The state of emergency has been lifted now, but for a while there, they were doing updates every couple of days. So he came on, he joined our group. He actually made a Facebook account specifically so he could join our group because he had heard about us. In the early days, there wasn't a lot of availability. So even if you had the funds to purchase masks, it was really difficult to find them. So we did help them out. We sent a whole bunch of masks to the Calgary Emergency Management Agency. There's some photos. So they were super helpful. This is a gentleman who came, picked up a big box of masks. This is Cindy, one of our leadership team, giving out a bag of masks with her hockey stick. That's her way of handing someone something, but keeping her 6 foot distance. She uses a hockey stick. This is Sue Henry. She's the deputy chief of the CEMA, of the Calgary Emergency Management Agency. She is actually demonstrating one of our masks right there and talking about us in the update. We had support from doctors. So it was really hard in the beginning to even talk about face masks. There's so much backlash against masks. We really needed people behind us to say that, yes, we know there are all these stories out there about how terrible masks are, they don't do any good, blah, blah, blah. It was really a requirement for us to have someone like Tom Sampson and someone like Joe Vipond, who I'm showing right here, back us up and say, yes, these are a good idea. Everyone should have one.
I apologize, Fuyo, for interrupting. We're just running out of time and need to move into the next presentation,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yeah.
If you've got a couple quick wrap-up comments, or
I'm almost done here. Were there any questions?
there aren't any posted. I have definitely seen some conversation on your presentation and how tremendous the work effort that was put in. Comments like it's just awesome, and they can't believe how many masks you guys created. I know
this is my slide of how often I got hit up by the media. I was on the news a lot. We actually made the national TV morning show, the Global Morning Show, which is filmed in Toronto. More media. So the Royal Alberta Museum requested a mask pack from us, and we sent them some stuff for their archives. Yeah. Just some final thoughts, you know, the time to act in a crisis does not look like a crisis. That's, you know, I am expecting phase 2, phase 3. I don't think this is something that is over and done with. I think we all have to be careful and, you know, pay attention. You know, I really do think that if you're in a situation where you're not able to practice social distancing, you know, please carry a mask with you. That's why we went to all this effort to make sure that everyone who needed a mask could have one. And yeah, that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Fuyo. Tremendous effort by you and your team. And I love the sense of community here. It shows us that an idea and a community can make a real impact. I love this story. Thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Thanks.
I want to introduce Jason Scarlett from Alberta Health Services. He is going to talk about COVID-19 from the perspective of an AHS analyst. Thank you, Jason, for sharing your story with us today. We really appreciate that.
Sounds good. I trust you can see my screen there.
That we
Yes,
can.
you got it. Yep.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. Well, thanks, Tink, for organizing and sending out the invite. Appreciate this opportunity. It's been a hectic couple of months here, a few months. So I want to share some of the work that AHS has been doing behind the scenes and give a little bit of my perspective on what has been happening and how we've been working with data and the visualizations. So just a little quick background on myself here. Engineer by training, but happened to stumble across some work with the Foothills Medical Center here in Calgary, doing some modeling with the cardiac surgery group. And then once I wrapped up my schooling, I ended up coming on full time with the Calgary Health Region and then with Alberta Health Services. So I've been doing this for, I think it's about 13 years now, 13, 14 years. A lot of modeling and analysis within the acute care emergency department settings. So I thought this is a fun chart. It's called Labeled at Axis, and I think maybe we should start a new, I don't know, hashtag. I don't have a Twitter account or whatever it is, but this is a new fun thing to try to do. It's labeled at Axis. So here's some data, and the question is, what do you think this represents? So it's COVID-19 related. I wish if you want to unmute or type away in the chat window, feel free. This is a visualization of that data, and here's another one. Similar, same data, just visualized slightly differently. I was playing around with how we could visualize this data. So I'm not sure if you have any guesses. I'll give you a hint. The gray is the weekends and the blue is the weekdays.
Just about to say it. That's all I knew, Jason.
Yeah, you saw the weekend pattern. Yep.
I was like, this must be weekend.
Yep. So there's some weekend stuff in there. And it's COVID-19 related, but it's not what you think. Probably not anyways. This is my email inbox. This is what has happened as an analyst within AHS. So somewhere around March 7th, a couple of emergency department physicians got in contact with myself and my boss and said, you know what, something's up. We're starting to see some patterns in the ED. You know, can we take a look to start doing a deeper dive? And that was March 7th, the weekend of March 7th. And so we started digging, and pretty quickly the cases started to roll in and things started to get very busy very quickly. So it took maybe a week from that point to when things started to go pretty crazy. So that's emails per day. So I think I checked it at about 218 per day. If you go over 9 hours, that's like an email every 3 minutes is sort of what I was seeing. And it's tapered off, but it has still not returned to normal by any means. But what's involved in all of this activity? Lots of emails back and forth. What has been happening? So I think of analytics as the use of data, analysis techniques, and interpretation to inform decisions. There's sort of three pillars I like to see it as. Helps me manage my workflows and sort of segment things as I work through the different projects. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is just the data. So this is the storage of information. As you can imagine with COVID-19, we have a lot of data sets that exist in the hospitals, but this is new. This is something a little bit different. We're going to need to capture information on a cohort of patients. And so we need to do something around that data. And so what did we do? Very quickly on, I pushed for a common area for all the analysts. So within AHS, the analysts are scattered about in different departments. It was very obvious that we needed a common place for everyone to put this data because we're all going to be working on it. It was a new thing. So we pushed for a new schema in our Oracle data warehouse, and we started dumping data in. And it really was dumping data. Whatever we had, we just started throwing it in there, taking Excel sheets and just processing them and pushing them into Oracle, or replicating data from other Oracle or SQL servers and just pushing that data in there. And from there, we started to give out permissions. We set up a little process and said, okay, go ahead, get access to the data. This little Tableau dashboard that you see here is a dashboard monitoring the table comments, because obviously as you start having analysts dump data sets in there, it can turn into the Wild West. And so we did some analysis there and just tried to show people what had comments and what didn't have comments, so they could actually go in there and add comments to their tables as they created them. things were moving very quickly and continue to move quickly. And this is probably, I'm going to say it's 50% of the work, quite honestly, is getting those data sets in there and curated and standardized to some small degree. The next section is sort of the analysis. So we have analysts spread out across AHS in probably 100 different departments. We have a central hub, but many of the analysts are embedded in different areas. And so for COVID-19, there's a rather large, maybe they're not that large, but there's a group in our public health and surveillance that is used to doing the influenza and other outbreaks. And so they played a key part in doing the analysis. This is up their alley. And so they were a key focal point for a lot of the analysis. What I'm going to show you here is a little bit more of the operational side of things. So for example, here, this is the daily number of visits to our emergency rooms. And so you can see there in the top right is really the key one. We're hovering at the major sites, having, sort of 3,800 visits per day. And then sometime in March and April, it just dropped off down to about 1,700 was the lowest day. So that's almost, cutting it in half or a little more even. So that was a pretty dramatic drop in the number of patients that were visiting the emergency rooms. That's, obviously part of the lockdown and the communication that went out. Here's another one with the occupancy in the hospitals. How many people are in the hospitals? We were averaging somewhere around 90, 95% occupancy. But once that sort of lockdown started to happen, we dropped down to 71%, which is the lowest it's ever been in my history of being with AHS, and probably a lot longer than that. And then there's been a slow recovery as well. So that gives you a little bit of background on what was happening hospital volume wise. But then we really wanted to know more about the COVID-19 and what was going on there. And so early on, the first month or so, much of the data was just coming from China. And we were looking at that data, looking at the different case rates and testing rates and trying to understand what those patterns were. And then Italy came along and Germany and Spain and a few other places, New York. And so we're monitoring those data sets to understand what was going on and what might happen in Alberta and using that for a lot of the modeling. But this chart here is really the one that I think stands out for communicating part of the, the underlying patterns. And so I'm going to hop over to Tableau here. And let's just find this guy here. And so this dashboard is just really a descriptive analysis of some of the patterns that we were seeing with COVID-19. And so the first thing we sort of did is typical. You've seen a lot of these curves out there already. Number of cases split up by zone. So Calgary had, the lion's share there. The South had some spikes there. And Edmonton just recently has had a little bit of an upward trend. Number of hospitalizations. How many people are ending up in the hospital across the zones? Number of deaths across the zones. If you do the deaths per million, you get a slightly different story, right? Because obviously some of these zones are smaller population areas, so it kind of balances it out a little bit there. Case counts, daily case counts. Calgary zone again, right? So a lot of this stands out with Calgary zone leading the charge, so to speak. But you can see here Edmonton, right? What's been in the news recently, Edmonton has seen an uptick in cases. And from an analyst perspective, one of the real challenges is the time, as I think Fuyu said, the onset to detection times. That is a real issue because the tests have a certain time span and people can have symptoms much earlier than when they're tested and when we get the positive cases. So a lot of these cases that are being detected now are from the past. They could have been from a couple days ago, or they could have been from a week ago, and that can skew the numbers and affects the modeling that we have to do. More test counts again, and here's an interesting one: the positivity rate. What percent of the tests are actually positive? So that gives you a little bit of a sense of what's happening in the population. I know there's a big push for more tests, but we can see here in the different areas the positivity rates have remained fairly low. But the one that I really want to show you, and we can stratify by zone, by age, by health conditions. This is a very important one. How many underlying health conditions do people have? So we look at the entire population over a number of years and look at every prescription, every family doctor visit, every hospital visit, and try to understand what the underlying health conditions are for that person and put them into groups. And so you can click on this. This is Tableau. You click on it and it will actually filter all of the other charts. But just because of low cell numbers, I won't click anything there. But here's the one that I think is very informative. That one picture, if there's one picture that could tell the story, this would be the one for me. So this one is about the number of cases by age cohort across the top and by the number of health conditions on the left side. The size is the number of patients, and then the color determines their outcome as well as where the treatment occurred. And so you can see in the gray ones, they're live and they did not go to the hospital. There was no hospitalization. But in the bottom right corners where you really see the pattern, the yellow, orange, red are people who passed away. And the ones that are in red passed away and they were not in the hospital. So those are some of the nursing home outbreaks that happened. But this sort of tells the story of who is being affected and at what rate, all sort of in one picture. So I really like this one as a way to tell what's really going on with the outcomes. There's some more here that I won't go into, a little more detailed. But that's sort of a little bit of analysis of what we're looking at within AHS, and then looking at that by zone and facility and some different slicing and dicing there as well. Here's another one. If you've heard about the R0 or the reproductive number, it talks about how many people does one infected person infect. So if one person has it, how many more people do they infect? And something on the order above 1 means that it's spreading. Something below 1 means that it's shrinking away, essentially. And so you can see the pattern here, the cases per day. When it's high, the R value is above 1. As it drops down, it drops off. And so this is something we calculate internally and look at and use for forecasting and projections. And I'll show you some of the models later on for forecasting. And by all means, if there are questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. Happy to pause anywhere along here. And the final section here, presentation. So once you have the data curated, you've done some analysis, how do we communicate it? How do we inform those decisions? And so we have 50 plus analysts working on COVID-19 related content for different areas. Maybe it's something around PPE calculations, maybe it's around finance, maybe it's around cancer, maybe it's around any number of things, emergency department and inpatient, all sorts of things, long-term care, outbreaks, and the what do they call the contact tracing. There's lots of different analysts working in different areas. And so we built this dashboard to consolidate a lot of that content so that people could find it very quickly. I'll hop over to that one there. So from our landing page here, this is just our standard landing page. You come in and you hit the popular COVID-19 dashboards, and it takes you over to this landing page, another sort of welcome page for the COVID content. And so it just has the, some of the high flyers, some of the really common ones, but we also have a dashboard here that feeds off and shows you some of the more detailed ones. So you can look up a publisher. We have 80 workbooks. You can look up a specific publisher. You can click on one of these and say, what dashboards are within, what views, I guess, technically, are within this workbook. And so this is using the, what's it called, parameter actions, sort of a drill down kind of feature. So that's kind of a nice little feature to make a menu within Tableau. So the big question, though, came up when we were discussing this early on. Very early on, there was a lot of concern, I'd even say worry, and a little bit of anxiousness as to what do we need to prepare for. The first couple of weeks of the lockdown, there was a lot of uncertainty. We saw what was happening elsewhere, and the frontline staff and managers at the facilities were asking, what's going to happen? That was the big question. How many cases are we going to see? Where's the peak? When's the peak going to be? And I think some of this might be hindsight, but some of that peak predictions was, based on, data that was coming in, but it didn't take into account the human factor. But I sat down after hearing all these discussions and trying to present some data and not really having it stick. I sat down and said to myself, what would I want myself if I was the frontline manager, if I was managing a hospital, an emergency room? What would I want to know about what was about to happen? What do I need to know? And so this is what I came up with. Simple sketch. I drew it with my kids' felts and said, okay, I want to know how many ICU beds are we using now, and what's it going to look like tomorrow, in 5 days, and in 10 days, sort of a weather forecast. That's really what I was interested in. And so that's what I set out to create. I took this as my blueprint and said, okay, I'm going to create this because that's what I would want. And this is what it ended up looking like. So this is the inpatient side for Calgary. The number of inpatients, peak inpatients for any particular day, and then a little bit of a projection. So that projection is based on the spread that's happening in the community and how many, what the rate of spread is, I guess, is how I would put that. And that puts in sort of a high, medium, and low projection as to where those inpatient beds may go. So that's what that one is there. And I built that one, and that one is quite a popular dashboard. If we go back here and we look at it live here, it has something like 15,000 views or something along those lines. And I love the animation feature too. I think it's a nice bling, but I'll show it to you here. So here we are. These are all of them. And if I click over to Calgary, hopefully you see that. I'm not sure if the Zoom session has enough bandwidth to show the morphing line, but you get a sense of what's going on there. So there's Edmonton, and the previous one was Calgary. And then we do this for the inpatient. We also do this for the ICU. We also look at the reproduction number, which is the slide I showed earlier, across the provinces to see what it looks like for different areas. How is that changing? And then we do some other capacity stuff here as well, just looking at the different stages of capacity, how many ICU beds and how many inpatient beds, how do we have reserved at the various stages. But to be honest, we're nowhere near needing any of that capacity. So that's a good thing there. And so that's all I have for you here today. We'll open it up for questions out there.
Jason, I did type a question in there, and it's just really from your landing page dashboards, which are awesome. How do you drive the content for those landing pages?
So this one here, this popular content, this is a manually driven one. This one here is driven by the backend Postgres data. And so this one feeds off the back end and looks for anything that we've tagged with COVID. So we go through and we tag some of the content with COVID-19. There's a couple of rules in there for what gets included, depending on the project folder and the names and tags that are involved. But this one here is a manual creation. Yeah, take pictures and paste it in there. And we have another one, also manual. I wish, there was some script kiddies that could basically automate some of this stuff. But again, here's another one. There's another list of, it's driven by an Excel spreadsheet, but again, it's somewhat manual. The layout and all this kind of stuff is also manual. So
pretty nice. I like it.
Yeah. Okay.
Do we have any other questions for Jason?
I guess maybe on that, you said you set up a data mart for people just to dump data into. So what was, like, from an administrative perspective, what was that like for them to be getting it, like, rationalizing their data and getting so the data sets could talk to each other? Like, did you go through that exercise, or was it really, we'll just hope for the best?
A bit of both. Depends on who's doing it and how mature the analysts and the data managers were. So what we did is really a combined effort. I mean, the data that is coming in here is, from Excel spreadsheets. People were sending Excel spreadsheets of ventilators and capacity, and we were loading that in. Other data sets were coming from our clinical systems, and so they were already data feeds that we had. We just sort of trimmed them down and brought them in. Others were quite new. For COVID-19, we have a chronic disease outbreak management system that tracks all of the infectious diseases, communicable diseases, and that was a new data source that we needed to filter down and bring in. I think we were using Informatica for that. Other ones we're using Alteryx, and maybe in a month when we have Prep Conductor, we'll be using that. But it was really a bunch of analysts. For, I'd say 80% of it, analysts were bringing in data sources, and maybe 20% were data managers who then did a little bit more formal data management. And so what we have over here is the tables that are missing column comments. Well, we have another one here that says, okay, you know what, we have a table. Here's the table. I know that's Eddie. Eddie doesn't like to comment his tables. That's okay. But if we go into some of these here, well, yeah. And so now you can see here, here's the comments on the table. And then you can go in and you can see comments on the actual individual columns. But linking and matching up data is sort of the next thing. And analysts are typically responsible on the hook for making all that stuff match.
I love the way you did this. I guess the last question I have, and it's a bit of a tangent. You did not use Tableau Public to share your COVID data on the website, like on the ATB government portal.
No, and so what to say? Alberta Health, the ministry, is the official spokesperson for everything COVID-19.
Okay.
And so we're not really, everything has to go through them.
Okay.
Yep.
Hi, Jason. There's one question here. AHS has a bed occupancy dashboard for ICU. I was wondering if the one you built was synced with this organization, or was it just COVID related?
Synced with which, yeah, so there's a number of sources. So for ICU, and it all depends what kind of ICU occupancy you want to talk about. Do you want to talk about the real-time ICU occupancy? There is that data feed for real-time occupancy, and we took a cut of that data to do some real-time occupancy. But the other part that we needed for our early warning system was really more about the peak occupancy within a day. So we wanted to know how many concurrent ventilators and ICU beds were being used at a given time. So you can think within a day, let's say that there were 10 patients in an ICU and they have a plus or minus of 2. So 2 people leave and 2 people come in. It's okay if the 2 people leave and then the other 2 come in, they only have 10, but what if 2 come in first and then 2 leave? So you still need the 12 beds at some point in the day. And so the early warning system is actually taking the peak occupancy, which is a little bit of a different measure than just your quote average occupancy or midnight occupancy. So the definition and the use for some of these measures needs to be tweaked and done specifically for certain dashboards. And that's why you're going to see some, slightly different numbers between some of the different dashboards. So for example, this one isn't showing it now, but if I show you the inpatient one again, this 26 is a factor that at this point in the day, we're down to 26, but between now and the end of the day, I'm expecting a couple more patients to get admitted, which means this 26 today is going to jump up.
Okay, great.
That's why it's forecasting a little bit higher right now, but yep, go ahead.
I have a question. On your early warning system there, how are you calculating the low, medium, and high values?
Yeah, so what we try to do anyway, is on our dashboards, we create sort of a README page where we go into some of the details. So we have a purpose and background, about the data and the models, and there's a couple of different models that we have in there. One from April 5th from Alberta Health, and then we have another one that we did a doubling time, and then this one is based on the reproduction number. So the value here is looking at, approximately 4 days. Let's look at it here, and let's simplify this one. So what are we looking at? We have smoothing, right? You talked about 5-day smoothing. Here's a 9-day smoothing of the number of cases per day. And we're forecasting in the future as to how many real cases are out there versus the number that we've actually tested positive and detected. Once we've done that, we say between infections, between the time one person is infected and the next person is infected is an average of 4 days. And based on that, what we say is that at this point in the curve, if we had 126 and we look forward 4 days and we now have 140, we can calculate the you know, the exposure, not the exposure rate, but the infection rate, the reproduction rate, how much is it spreading? And based on that increase of, you know, I don't know what that is, about 1.4, we now expect in the future that our admissions are going to increase by that factor. So we're using the infection rate in the community to predict the infection rate in the hospital. That being said, that's sort of a high level. We do have other ways of doing it, such as the doubling time, which is looking at how long it takes for the cases to double. And then the other way, which we haven't released, is more of a machine learning, using an XGBoost machine learning model that I don't want to go into, predicting, you know, the underlying health conditions and the age of the people that are being detected, and looking forward to say whether or not they are actually going to be admitted. But that's the next version. We still have low volumes, and it's hard to do much modeling with low volumes in Alberta right now.
I guess that's something to be grateful for.
Yes, yeah, and that's, I mean, that's been a lot of the challenges. ICU here, I mean, projecting 150 ICU beds and we've hit 20, you know, that's great.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I can show you some of the earlier models. The growth rates that were expected look like that, right? And so this is based on the China experience of a reproduction number of 2 dropping down to 1.5 and holding. It gets scary numbers. So that was an initial model, and then we had a second model, and then we had another, you know, the third model, which is the more recent one.
Thank you very much, Jason. Thanks for providing that insight into our province and into our city. We really appreciate that. What tremendous work. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add just before we wrap up?
No, that's it. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks again. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join us this afternoon. We really appreciate that. We hope to schedule another one of these events, probably in early fall. So please take time to enjoy your summer and to stay safe. I just want to quickly give you a screenshot here of our contact information for the Tableau user group. I hope you can see that there. And thanks again. Hope to reach out to everyone again in the fall.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good job, guys. Way to go, Jason. Don.
Thank you.